everybody, and welcome back to Rule the Roost podcast. Wow, Antonio Conte's nasty lily whites. They're doing the business. No losses so far, no L's on the board. Although, many people are kind of acting as if we have got L's on the board. They need to snap out of it, don't they, Spooky?
No, because then I'd have nothing to be triggered with. Do you know what I mean? I need to be fighting something all of the time. Do you know what I mean? So let them continue to moan. To be fair, I'm seeing more and more on my timeline now, even though I've got most people muted. And a certain someone keeps sharing things through WhatsApp that ends up with me going down a rabbit hole and therefore finding these tweets in the first place. Wonder who that is. But yeah, I mean, I don't get it, mate. I understand the critiquing. I understand that there are things that need fixing. There's certain things that are definitely worth debating and talking about. But when you look at the stats, you look at the points accumulated since Conte's been here, you look at the confidence and the self-belief in the players, you look at how professional and efficient they are. They're doing all the basics really, really well. We just haven't got swagger. We haven't got urgency in that first half at the moment. Long season ahead.
I mean, see, this is the thing, right? I've seen obviously the Mourinho comparisons are coming, and I don't...
That's mad.
Yeah, but I get it. I do get the feeling like we invite pressure onto ourselves quite a lot, and it isn't always the prettiest to watch. There is kind of that fear. Oh, if we're doing this against a better team, are they going to make their chances count? But then I sort of look at it and think, well, what chance? I mean, Chelsea. It remains to be seen how good Chelsea are or not, right? I think that's kind of is very up in the air.
Sure.
I think we'd all hoped that they'd be terrible, but maybe they're not. But maybe they are. We don't really know. But still, we played in a similar fashion against them. Yep, they got 2 goals, but they were 2 pretty fluky goals, right? They were the second goal was probably more an error on our part, but other than that, they weren't creating a hatful of chances. Like, the Roost didn't have an awful lot of work to do. And Nottingham Forest yesterday got 1 shot on target. So, yeah, I do to your point, like, I do think there's a certain level of professionalism, focus to what Tottenham are doing. And one of the big differences, I would say, I was talking to somebody about on Twitter yesterday, that, like, the big difference for me is that when we're going forward, there's so much more of a plan there. It's not just give it to Son and Kane and see what they can do kind of thing. Like the way we attack in those waves. I don't know if you saw they highlighted it on Match of the Day last night. They were just showing like the waves of players, like bodies that flood forwards every time Spurs get the ball, and kind of like the attack formation, if you like, the kind of the patterns that they're all running in. It's pretty amazing to see, but. Do you think we've not clicked, or do you think this is all part of the plan? Do you think we are just kind of like tire them out in the first half and then go for it second half kind of thing? Because
there's so many theories around this that have been bouncing around my head, because you can say that maybe we are being deliberate, possibly. But then you can counter that by saying that we don't always look that comfortable with the middle pairing, being congested, being outrun and outfought because there's just too many bodies from the opposition in the middle. So then you think, why would we deliberately allow ourselves to be overwhelmed in the middle, and then wing backs kind of drop too deep and they're not supporting the midfield? But on the counter, it all does click, right? Against Forest, you can bang on about Spurs giving up possession, but then you can look at the amount of chances that we created. Every time we went forward, you thought, we're going to score. And it was just individual polish, arguably, that didn't allow us to go 3 or 4-0 up, right? So you can say if that happened, the system's working perfectly fine. Allowing a team like Forest to attack us didn't really cause us that many problems. If you actually look at all their possession and their pretty football, they weren't really crafting those opportunities out there. Maybe had 1 or 2 good efforts, but aside from that, we defended really comfortably. And obviously you've got Conte saying that, it's not what he expected. So there's this kind of Mourinho-esque echo of, this isn't what we trained to do. We should have more of the ball. The midfield should be passing the ball with more confidence and more control. And definitely, I think that there's no problem with us being deliberate and allowing the opposition to retain possession and then us counter slapping them. That ain't a problem. But I guess it's the minute to minute sloppiness and casualness and that kind of lack of connection between certain players that you can read a lot into. And I think a lot of people are comparing to Mourinho and Nuno, but genuinely, I think that's a cartoon exaggeration of what's playing out. We are nowhere near as, the Mourinho's Tottenham seems to have this kind of one way, one route type of football, right? Pump it up towards Kane and Son. And the whole high line thing when it was working. But other than that, we always looked uncomfortable. I never looked to the players and believed that they knew what they were doing. It looked chaotic. And Mourinho would often say, it's the players, that's not what we train to actually do. But with Conte, it does feel like they know what they're meant to be doing. But perhaps they haven't got that kind of extra bounce, that extra little bit of energy. And the first half thing compared to the second half, I often wonder at home, we've got enough quality to maybe relax the conditioning and the tactical element of. I know Conte is very stubborn, but maybe the first 15, 20 minutes of a home game, just fucking attack. Just go fully Harry Redknapp on them. And just because the thing is, we will overwhelm teams. But he's obviously very committed to playing this particular way. And maybe there's a purpose to that. Maybe the thinking is that over 30 games, 40 games, cup games included, you're bound to win a lot more if you're conditioned in a certain way rather than freestyling it and just being a little bit more open. So it's a tricky one. And again, I'm kind of sat here thinking, wait until 10 games, 15 games have gone. We know whether this is us not clicking completely or whether this is our style of football. And I doubt it's that.
Do you think, one of the issues I have with it, really, because I was on my little rambling kind of solo pod reflecting after the game yesterday. My whole kind of point there was that, and this is what I feel essentially, is that I think whatever Conte's doing now is only really going to be something that we're going to be able to fully appreciate positively or negatively in retrospect, right? It's something we're going to look back on and say, oh, that's what he was doing, that was a masterstroke, or, oh, that's what he was doing, how naive, it's Mourinho all over again kind of thing. And I mean, it's... So I'm finding it hard to sort of draw too many conclusions out the back of this. The only sort of thing I do kind of feel about it, and that's maybe, I guess, disappointing, that's the sort of word I'd use for it. Like you say, especially when we're at home, like in the Wolves game, I do kind of feel that like the tendency to sit back, shall we say, sit back and absorb whatever it is that they can bring at us. I do feel that it emboldens our opposition a bit. I do feel like it breeds a lot of
it allows them to settle.
Yeah, confidence, and it lets them play the sort of the game they want to play, which I don't really know still. I mean, it's tough, isn't it, right? Because is Conte doing this to kind of tire out the opposition, the old, whatever it is, rope-a-dope, sucker punch type thing? Or is this simply a case of him, again, as Mourinho did, having kind of fears about the individual quality in our defence, thus creating a solid defensive unit to whatever the word, to compensate for that? But either way, you kind of would sort of like to think Spurs have more quality available to us than to just kind of really sit back and take it, if you like. But I mean, like I say, this is the thing though, but maybe that's not what we're doing. Maybe we're just fully comfortable in the fact that we know we can contain these teams, see them get frustrated, see them break ranks, see them kind of commit players further forwards, knowing that it almost guarantees us goals. It almost, and that's the crazy thing about the quality of our attack, right? Is it's not just a kind of, oh, let's just counter attack and hope. It's not like kind of the old days of Spurs when we'd have somebody like Chris Armstrong or Stefan Everson leading the line, and it's kind of like, well, if we get them into a good opportunity, there's a hope that they'll score. The mad thing about this Tottenham attack is really, if there's a viable opportunity for them, 9 times out of 10 they're probably going to score it, right?
Yeah.
So if we are kind of employing this tactic whereby we're letting the opposition come onto us, like I say, commit more bodies forwards in this hope that, oh, Spurs are sitting back, we can do something against them here, knowing that every time we get a break, we can almost guarantee a goal. Maybe it is a kind of form of attack. Maybe defence is the best form of attack, Spooky. That old adage. Like,
I mean, this is it. What we don't know is what they're actually agreeing to and planning. Hotspur way. Like, what is there a logic behind the whole kind of preserve yourself, hold back, let them come at us. We know we got the quality to counter. We're going to score goals. It's not a problem. We're good enough to contain them. It's not the most entertaining type of football, but you're right. I don't think Conte's Chelsea, when he won the league with them, were that kind of inclined to play defensively like that. They obviously had more elite players, as they have always. Well, I mean, you know what it's like. They just collect players and they send most of them out on loan. It's a maddening difference, when you look at these type of squads, and it's a lot easier to ask them to play a certain type of way. But what they did really well, and I guess what a lot of top tier teams do really well, is in the moments where you're not counter attacking, in the moments where you're not setting traps for the opposition to fall into. You kind of kill several minutes of football by holding onto the ball and controlling and maybe draining that tempo back towards our advantage, rather than giving them the ability to dictate the waves of attack. And yeah, at home it should the onus should be on us, definitely, because I think we've got enough about us to kill teams in the first half, rather than have to come out in the second half and graft a little bit harder. And we are giving away that tempo by sitting back. We are allowing the team to settle, the other team to find their rhythm and their groove, and suddenly they're the ones who think, oh, hello, we can keep going at Tottenham here. And we made a mistake, against Southampton. They scored first, even though we were kind of knocking on the door, but it wasn't at full pelt. It's 4 games, so there's all these other questions around the whole thing about clicking. Is it because there's certain players that are not playing that well at the minute, or that the midfield is perhaps not really getting to grips with what they're being tasked to do, and maybe the way we're adjusting to support the midfield isn't quite working, because then it impacts the wing backs, and there's all these little kind of narratives going on that I'm not paid to worry about. But if we're talking about it like we keep saying, Conte must be aware, and he must also know that you can't get away with this type of football all of the time, and we are holding back the potential of this team. But when you've got Son not really, firing on any cylinders right now, that takes a fair bit out of you, because that could be like an extra goal a game that you're missing out on, more or less. There's certain things that just feel like they need a bit more polish. And again, I know it's broken record. It's a long old season. I'd rather we build into that kind of momentum rather than just click on the first game, because then I'd be really worried. There'd be like no ceiling to kind of shoot through. So
but this is
it's
the thing,
tricky, man. There's no clear answer to any of this, and I think people are seeking. They want an answer, and they're going to give you the answer, and it's either going to be we're fucking shit, or it's be patient. We've barely lost in 15 games or whatever it is. If you really consider last season relevant, and we're accumulating points, and we know how to grind and win games, and we're still playing well. This thing about us having 4 poor 4 poor performances, I think is a bit of an exaggeration as well.
I think it's a massive. I think it's a
people.
massive over-exaggeration.
Yeah.
Kind of. There's a couple of things there to touch on. Is in that, if we're talking about them down the road in comparison to us, look at the level, the intensity, the kind of the emotion they're pouring into every single one of their games now. But really, that's hiding the fact that, look, they got that Palace game. Really, it was a tougher game than they let on. But Palace away is a tough game. Palace are a decent side, so I think that is a good result for them. But that game against Fulham, man, they dragged that over the line. They really dragged that over the line. They're doing kind of victory laps of the pitch and stuff after that. And this isn't celebration police, but this is also kind of noticing that the intensity and the... Just look at the fan base. Look at the way they're reacting. They're so desperate to say that, like... There was one lad earlier on today saying that, like, I'm telling you now, this has got the same aura as the Invincible season about it. Fella, come on, lads. We all get excited. We all look forward to this. But I really do think that type of stuff is indicative about a lot of the stuff that is going on about Arsenal at the moment. Like, we really, honestly, I really think we fucking knocked them silly, beating them to the top 4 last season. There's such an air of desperation about everything that they're doing right now, right? And in terms of with Spurs, where we're at, we're 2 points off of them. We've arguably played a more difficult game than them in Chelsea away. Wolves are not easy. Forest, again, decent enough side potentially with the amount of money and everything they've spent, but whatever, we've probably had comparable fixtures other than we've had Chelsea away, they've had Palace away. I would still say Chelsea away is a more difficult fixture of the two, but we're getting there at a canter with a feeling that we've still got levels to go up. We haven't clicked yet. Arsenal feel like they're playing kind of liquid football at the moment. Arsenal feel like Gabriel Jesus is performing at an elite level right now. Odegaard is performing at a really, really good level. Their defence looks sound, but you're waiting for it's all going swimmingly for them now. So we're waiting for the things. We're waiting for the cracks to appear for them. We're already kind of seeing the cracks at Spurs at the moment. Not even cracks. That cracks feels overstated. We're seeing the things that we feel that we can improve upon now, but we're still getting the results. And all of the noises coming out of Conte, it's not fist pumping at the crowd. It's not coming on and doing these big showy kind of hugs of all the players on the pitch at the end of each game, all this type of thing. It's Conte saying, it's a long, hard season. These players know what it takes. They know they have to win every single game. They have to come into every single game and want 3 points. We're not celebrating anything yet. And it's not as flashy, it's not as fun, it's not as exciting. But again, like you were saying about Conte's Chelsea, do you know who the flashy, fun, exciting team were then? Tottenham fucking Hotspur. That 16-17 Maurizio Pochettino team were probably the best team in Europe, the most exciting, fun team to watch. Brilliant, absolutely fantastic. And as I said on a podcast sort of a few weeks back, that Antonio Conte's Chelsea side were just a horrible, robotic menace that just didn't drop points. They just got it all the way to the end. 86 points we finished on, and we still didn't win the Premier League because of them. If we can let Arsenal do whatever they want, let Arsenal kind of release whatever shirt they want to release that looked great, and let them kind of make compilations and talk about Martinelli and Odegaard and whoever being the best players in the world. If we're the ones that keep getting results and we get it across the line, I couldn't give a fuck at this point in time. I've lost probably a lot of this sense of like, if we are going to win the league, we have to win it this so-called right way. I just want to see us fucking win something big now, mate. That's kind of what I feel. So if I do have to sacrifice a little bit of myself to that, to this Conte, whatever it is, I can take it, and as you say, I'm not even that convinced that it is that stale what we're watching. Some of the kind of the patterns in attack that we're seeing are pretty fucking brilliant, I wanted to talk. Yeah, go on, mate.
I was just going to quickly say, I don't think the issue with Arsenal, the thing that they should be worried about, is that you can only get so far on motivation, which I think is what Arteta is good at. He feels like he's motivating a Sunday league team of like 14-year-olds. And he's like being this dad character and putting his arms around them, but shouting at them too. But it doesn't feel like there's much more to that. And I think the fragility there is being showcased by him, by the overreactions, and like almost like, you're the best. I told you you're the best, and I'm going to show you that you're the best. I'm going to hug you, and all the, and they're fans who have been humbled to the point where they're actually enjoying football again, but they don't really understand how to just enjoy football without it being kind of polluted by extreme hopes. Back in the day when Spurs fans used to be accused of delusions of grandeur and the rest of it, I think the Arsenal fan base seem to have fallen into that kind of pattern where playing really well is somehow a sign of greatness. And the reality is that you have to grasp for everything, and perhaps you have to hold back as well on being too emotional and too dreamy about what's happening. But anyway, I mean, I don't want to bang on about them too much, other than I think they're still a fragile football club from top to bottom. Spurs are more dogged. Spurs are looking more like a machine, and it's repetition, I guess. Maybe that's why we're playing the way we're playing, so that when we have to play like this, we know how it's going to play out. We know what we need to do. And this is what I mean. All the deep defending, everything that we were doing yesterday, even with Forest having all that pressure, Spurs never gave they never gave the impression they were going to collapse. They never gave the impression, because there was no real pressure there. It was just watching Forest play the ball. And to be fair, they looked pretty good. But you need that punch at the back end of it, and Spurs have got that in abundance. Even when we're not firing on all cylinders across the front three, we can still win 2-0 and should have won 4 or 5-0, arguably. So that is good. That's a positive, because it just shows you that Spurs can win these games. When we step up, and people saying that we're not going to step up, when we do step up, there'd be another level. Maybe we can settle on that other level. Maybe we then don't fall back to the levels that we've seen in the first 4 games, where we're surrendering all this time and space and then counter-attacking. Maybe we can go up a level and maybe have more of the ball in the first half and rattle the opposition more, and then settle back. They get happy, they attack, we counter, we score. So there's probably a really kind of logical kind of structure to what Conte's trying to do, and a lot of it is this kind of suffer together, mentality, hate losing, and I think that's the dirty work, that's the ugly work, that's the stuff that we do not like watching as supporters, but it's a necessary trait. And we have banged on for years about Spurs not having these traits, not having the winning mentality, and now we've got fucking Spurs fans who are literally saying it's not good enough, it reminds me of Nuno. Mate, it's not comparable. Like it is not comparable. I've seen turgid. I've seen people saying this. We're playing terrible football, and the midfield is this, and the attack is this, and Dyer and Davis are awful. And I don't buy into that. You can't say that after 4 games that this is terrible. When you look at the table and you just try and pull some context into what you're saying, you can see that Spurs are a very, very good team, but they have yet to really manoeuvre into the space that they'd be able to. And I'm all right with that. Now, ask me in 10 games, if we're still playing like this, then I'm going to be worried a little bit after 10 games.
Why 10 games in particular?
I don't know. I always had this thing about the first 10 games of the season. You by the end of them, you really kind of get to understand where you're heading.
Yeah.
Let's say we lose 1 in 10. That's pretty good going, I think, anyway. Because we might end up losing 1 game every 10 games, maybe. I mean, this is really basic science here and mathematics here. It doesn't really play out like that. We know that. But after 10 games, if we're like top 3 or whatever, and we haven't lost, or we've only lost 1 game, then you kind of know it's working. And if the football has lifted a little bit, in terms of urgency and dominance and possession and all these other things, then it's like, oh, there is a different style to the way we play. It's not just about sit deep and counter. But I can't remember who I was speaking to. Maybe it was Flav the other day, yesterday. Like, we're a counter-attacking team, so if that's what we're really good at and we're one of the best in the country, then we're gonna have to find a way to use that effectively, because we genuinely can score every time we go forward. We've got that type of quality up front. So it's how we counter the opposition countering our counter attacks. That's the thing that perhaps we've yet to really see. We see Chelsea nullify us quite well, and I guess that's where some of the other question marks are.
I think one of the things that's quite interesting and worth bearing in mind as well is that really we're in that stratosphere of teams now, especially the hype, and the whole fucking country sings "What do you think of Tottenham?" Nowadays, which is just mad to me. It's mad to me that we are like the bad guys in all this, but we are, and that's just whatever. So I cross to bear, but it does seem that like most of these games that we're playing at the moment, the teams really, really want to get a result. Like they're turning it up to like notch 11, right, when they play against Tottenham, and that's something that we can't kind of understate. The fact that all of their players are treating us like a fucking cup final at the moment, and we're still coming through these games.
Yeah.
And I do think when this season, right, because this is early, it's still early days in the season, right. We've all seen the state of that October fixture list, right? Teams are going to start getting fucking tired soon. Teams aren't going to be able to play with this intensity against Tottenham for an entire season. And that's when I really think we're going to start to see us shine. Like when it really gets into the business end of this, teams start picking up injuries, fatigue mounts up, all this type of thing. A Spurs team that's as ruthless as this, that can just kind of stay disciplined, stay focused, and strike when they need to. It's a type of team that, again, I keep saying it, mate, but it's a type of team that wins titles. It
Exactly.
really is. And I think I get it. Like it is. It's the early point in the season. Everyone's excited. Everyone's bought all their new merch this top end of the year. Everyone's kind of got their tickets lined up. They're looking at what European games they're going to go to or not. Or do you know what I mean? It's a new season. It's new promise. We want to kind of see all the new signings come in. We want to see a completely new Tottenham going out with swagger, with verve. But it just feels again like it's Tottenham kind of going about business as usual. The business at the tail end of last year that saw us come from fucking Phoenix from the ashes to go on and qualify for the Champions League. Lest we forget the Arsenal team last year, who were looking like they were odds on to get Champions League football, who were playing with this verve, this swagger, this whatever. But when it fucking came down to it, they couldn't get it over the line. And the team that was there was Tottenham Hotspur, playing much in the same way as they're playing now, just in a disciplined, professional, decisive, kind of ruthless fashion. And what is it, like Conte's record now, isn't it? Spurs are like, we've won the most games this calendar year or something. I'm not sure what it is. But
yeah, there's a point accumulation since Conte became manager, and it's all positive stats. It's obviously where people are fixating is the style of football. It's a weird dance that Spurs fans kind of stumble and tread on each other's feet with, because on the one hand it's like, I want us to win something, I want us to be competitive, I want us to not bottle it and all this kind of stuff, and then when Spurs are actually playing in a way that allows them to blossom in terms of discipline and to be nasty and to be ugly and to just have those traits that winners have, people then shit the bed and are suddenly, well, this is, I don't understand what's going on. It's going to fall apart any minute. And we keep on winning games. We keep accumulating the points. But they're almost fighting against the very thing that they want. Now, I don't want us, like, style and identity is really important to me and to most Spurs fans. but there's got to be a bit of a balance in there. Like, we have to make sacrifices. I backed Jose Mourinho because I thought there'd be a balance between that kind of winning mentality, grinding results out, being a bit dirty, being a bit different, and then stylizing it a little bit with a bit of Tottenham football. But it never went that way. It just completely fell apart. He did not have the capacity to give us what we needed, and the players obviously didn't have the capacity as a collective to give him what he wanted. So it was just, it didn't sink. Whereas it is sinking with Conte, and they're buying into it, and I think most fans are buying into it as well. But we kind of fall back on the old Tottenham, swashbuckle swagger. I don't think you get that with a Conte team. I think we all knew that from the start. But perhaps, like I said earlier, there is another level that we can get to where we're more aggressive, that we do the bullying in the first half, and we're like, this is our patch. We're going to put you in your place in the opening 20, 25 minutes. The game's going to be dead. See you later. I think we do have that in us for a lot of the home games. And that's what I want from this Conte team. Maybe to show me
against your Bournemouths and stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
you want
and
us just trample them.
Yeah, I'm not being disrespectful to these teams either. I'm not,
fuck it. Be disrespectful.
the Premier League's a tough old league, right? If you take anything for granted, if you're complacent, if you're overconfident, you think you've won the match before it's even kicked off, then you're gonna fall on your arse. It happens often. And with Spurs, it used to be, I guess, a trait, but it wasn't really a Tottenham trait. There's no such thing as Spursy in reality. It's just that teams get beaten, teams make mistakes, teams are inconsistent. And Conte's worked really hard to make us consistent, make us difficult to play against. We have those players.
And that's big, right? That's huge, because we
massive.
do forget that, right? We really forget that. Under Mourinho and under Nuno, the consistency was fucking maddening, or the lack thereof, Sorry,
and it
I
took
just jumped in, but
no, it's fine. I mean, it took time for Conte to find that consistency too, but that was more because he was trying to implement structure and systems and transitions and patterns of play and all the other things, and they weren't gelling, they weren't working. You could see the players weren't quite kind of organically flowing into the space that they were meant to flow into, and the movement looked a bit disjointed. And that's just the learning curve. That's just the difficult part, where you're kind of not getting it. You have to study and study and study, and then you sit the exam and you fucking pass it. And Spurs passed the exam. I guess the exam would have been the way that last season ended, and we kind of pulled it out the bag. But it's that's development, and a lot. And again, the impatience in football is that people think that, we've lost again, end of days, we're fucking done. And it's like, no, you're not. We're not done. Like, they're building blocks, and we have to build towards something. He's not a magician. Things aren't going to click immediately, but all the right things have clicked. It's just at the minute, arguably, it's some of the application in some of the games that we want more from, because we know that we're capable of a lot more. And again, I believe that level will be reached at some point soon.
I think as well, like in terms of what you're saying about like not being disrespectful to other sides. I mean, yesterday, the conversation, I feel, is very, very different were it not for Nottingham Forest's pretty exceptional defending. Like there's if you actually look back on the game, there's at least 3 or 4 goal-saving challenges. Like thrown
I saw your
in
tweet about this.
Yeah, number
Completely agree.
One of the main ones, Højbjerg's through ball to Kane. Kane was through on goal, and it was a literal like last-ditch, perfect sliding tackle to deny Kane the opportunity. There was another one. There was at least 2, if not 3, on Kulusevski when he kept cutting in. Like they had the measure of Kulusevski in terms of his cut-in, Iron Robin, left foot kind of thunder bastard routine. So Forest played well. You've got to give them their dues. I wanted to sort of ask you, mate, because it's a sensitive one. We've kind of touched on it a little bit, but where are you at with Son? What are your feelings? Because
Yeah.
look, he's
What are
obviously,
you thinking?
well, he's not. He hasn't been great, has he? And it's hard to know. It's all speculation at the moment, right? It's all speculation. Is he tired? Is he carrying the kind of weight of having won the Golden Boot last year? Is he somebody that's not responding well to the fact he's got competition now? We always kind of take for granted, or we just assume, should we say, that players having competition, people breathing down their neck, is going to bring the best out in them. Not everybody performs that well under those kind of circumstances. Last time we saw Son with real kind of competition trying to get into the team, we almost sold him, in the early days of his career at Spurs, when he was battling with Eriksen, Dele Alli, these kind of players to get a bit of game time. It wasn't until we kind of ended up playing a system that more kind of catered to his unique kind of abilities and things like that we started to get the best out of Son and everything like that. So now he's got Richarlison, Kulusevski, they're kind of providing competition for him. Still got Mora kind of on the bench there or thereabouts. Maybe he's just not performing that well, or maybe it's just Son in a bit of a moment. Maybe he's just not doing that well. But I think the point is, and I do contradict myself a bit on this sometimes, because I do feel that there is this kind of, and I agree with it. The point is made. I think you were making the point with Bardi on the Fighting Cock the other week that we need to stop viewing this as a starting 11. This is a squad game. This isn't players that are being dropped. This is a player that's kind of being rotated, brought in because for whatever reason. And I do agree with, this is the problem. I really do agree with that. But I do feel that this Son situation is a lot more sensitive, because he has been one of our main protagonists for the past 3-4 years now, right? And I think with this new guy, Richarlison, coming in, if we suddenly start a game when Son's not been playing particularly well, with Richarlison instead of Son, it is going to feel like Son's been dropped. Do you know what I mean? And it's I guess, if we're being ruthless about it, if we're being nasty kind of Conte about this is kind of where heroes are made or they fall, isn't it? This is kind of this is what the game's about. But I guess me, just personally, I'm not as comfortable in this feeling that Son is just somebody that we should just discard, somebody that should just be jettisoned from the team. We sort of, in his good moments, we're all very comfortable talking about this is a guy that loves Tottenham. He kind of lives and sort of breathes Spurs. He signed a new contract with us. He could have gone to anywhere in the world. Liverpool would have had him. Munich would have had him. Real Madrid probably would have had him. But no, he's dedicated to Tottenham. He loves us. We love him. It's Sonny. It's the fans' player of the season. And now, kind of 2-3 games in, I just think there's a disproportionate level of ire for him, I guess, in certain circles. And I don't know. People need to be free to be able to discuss the idea of Son being kind of dropped. I guess the point I'm trying to make is I'm not comfortable with it overall yet. I think he needs a bit more time, and I do think he'll come good. But I'm not under any illusions. It hasn't been good at the moment. It really hasn't. No, he was awful yesterday. He was really bad.
I think we might have spoken about it before, and I think it's been mentioned on in every conversation really. That he's kind of stuck in his own head, and we don't know if it is a fitness thing. We don't know if it's like a psychological thing to do with Richarlison. Whether there is, on the pitch, there's this kind of lack of instinctive play. There's this kind of lack of self-belief, and you can see that. And yet, sometimes Son is a bit streaky. Sometimes he has games where, he's either 100% or he's 40%, and there's no in between. These are all the type of things that we say as Spurs fans. The whole language around players getting dropped. It's all very kind of negative and like, drop him, he's shit. And it's, well, like you said, it's a squad game. It's the whole point is to be able to protect these players. So dropping him for me is more about protecting him and trying to work out what it is that isn't quite working. Because if Conte really felt there was a problem there, then maybe he's asking him to play through it. But on the training pitch, it'd be obvious his levels would drop on the training pitch, and Richarlison, who looks like someone who believes should be playing ahead of Kane, the guy, it just oozes his self-belief. I imagine he's absolutely impeccable on the training pitch, right? I'm sure they all are. To be fair, they've got Conte as the gaffer. They're not. None of them are going to slack because they're not going to get anywhere near the first team. So Son must be doing something right in and around Hotspur way. Out on the pitch, he definitely looks a little bit lost. There was a conversation. I kind of spoke about it myself yesterday, and I need to look into this a bit more because I'm not the most analytical person in terms of tactics and the rest of it, but I'm just wondering whether his on-field responsibilities, him having to defend a lot more, is problematic to the way that his game flows. That is the fact that you're asking Son to defend and help the midfield out detrimental to what you're asking him to do when going forward? Because I think they're oceans apart in terms of the quality that he possesses when he's doing what he's good at, because he's a forward, rather than being asked to come back and maybe defend, which he's not very good at. I don't know, because he didn't have a problem last season, right? Golden boot, and he was on fire. I don't know if there's been some adjustments to tactics. Again, people that are more inclined with this type of stuff to look into it might be able to educate me a little bit more. Maybe I've got this completely wrong in my theory. Anything else is up for debate. We don't know. We don't know why his form has dropped. And it happens. It can happen. Some players start slowly. We've seen it with Kane. We've seen Kane. I know often with Kane it was coming back from injuries, but he looked lethargic and overthinking and heavy touches. And then something would happen. And it's usually scoring. This is how fragile footballers are, I guess, as well, just in terms of confidence, how one thing can change everything. And with Son, you kind of feel that if he starts against West Ham and he scores an absolute blinder, or he taps one in with his bum, whatever way, that will probably change his self-belief. Which is an incredible thing to talk about. The psychology of this really fascinates me, because you got a guy who shared the Golden Boot last year. You got someone who is undoubtedly a club legend. Confidence shouldn't be an issue, but we kind of forget as well that these are human beings, and as good as you are at anything, you can have self-doubt. It's crippling. You can have problems with with just the way that you approach things and not get it right at all. That might be the case. Now, we love Son, and this is what I mean. At some point, if he plays against West Ham and it's another poor performance, then yeah, I think the best thing for him, with the fixture congestion coming up, to bench him. And that would be us looking after Son. And then maybe that will create ignite a different type of reaction. He was very upset when he was subbed yesterday. He was angry. I mean, probably angry at something else, but deep down angry at himself that it still hasn't worked. And then you've got Richarlison coming on, showboating and showing a lot of quality as well for the assist and the way he won the ball and outside of the foot to Kane. It's a test. It's a test for Son. It's a test for Richarlison. Can he be influential as a starter rather than off the bench? And for Son, it's a test because you're right. He's not really been in this position before. But again, I think it's a little bit exaggerated only because we're so ambitious now, and the benchmark is so much higher that we should be worried and concerned. I think it's a very natural thing to want our best players to always be at their best. But Mo Salah, other players, top players at other clubs, they have their 3 or 4 games as well where they're not that effective. But we're on the outside looking in, and it doesn't bother us that much because we're not a Liverpool fan. We're not whomever. Like with Spurs, obviously everything is amplified because we are Tottenham supporters. So yeah, it's definitely a tricky situation. But but it shouldn't be because again, Conte will know best, Son will know best. They will make the right decision. If he starts against West Ham, then I'll back that, and hope that he scores, and then that will just maybe change his story arc for this very, very, very early stage of the season.
You jumped onto Richarlison there. I do want to talk about him, probably in quite a lengthy fashion in a minute, but
yeah, of course.
Before we get to him, I do want to just have another little shout out as well to Kulusevski because, mate, just what is this lad that we? I mean, again, I want to be able to say this stuff without people sort of perceiving this as somehow negative or whatever or fear mongering. I'm not. There's a distinct feeling here of like when we had Luka Modric with Kulusevski. It feels to me like we're witnessing an utterly exceptional generational player that in 2-3 maybe years time, Real Madrid do come to us and just say, what do you want? What do you want from him? Because I'm consistently just blown away by the lad and the level he's at. The footballing intelligence, the technical ability on display from a player as young as he is. I mean, it's always it feels silly to say because he is an attacking player, but he's not one of those really kind of acute centre point, focal point attacking players like Mbappe or Haaland. But I honestly bracket him at their level. I think he is. I think he's.
Wow.
Mate, I think he's one of the best young players in the world. I do. I think he's up there with Foden. I think he's up there with Haaland. I think he's up there with a player like Mbappe. Like he just to me he's a sensation. Like every time he gets the ball, I'm just wondering like how do we have this kid? And just as a kind of a player that was seen as a fairly underwhelming squad filling. Do you know what I mean? Random signing, Paratici calling up his old mates.
Exactly, like a desperate last minute job.
That we've signed a star boy, Can
I ask a question? Is Starboy the replacement for Wonder Kid?
I think so, yeah. I think that's what it is. It's me doing a bit of a how do you do, fellow kids? Do you know what I mean? Are you? I'm getting. Mate, you seem a bit more guarded. You not?
No, not at all. I completely agree.
Am I outing you as a Kulusevski hater here?
I don't disagree at all.
Or Kulusevski, as I think it was Jamie Redknapp kept calling him.
Yeah, I clocked that. Jamie Redknapp. That's another podcast on its own.
Kulusevski.
Kulusevski is. I know we've spoken about this before, but. He just doesn't. He's another player that just doesn't seem to be fazed by anything. And often when you hear him talk, there was an interview. I think it was with Sky Sports actually, where he's talking about what Conte expects from him, and there was all those quotes around, he doesn't want me to have fun. He wants me to go out there and kill, and he talks really well. His self-belief again is showcased every time he's on the ball. He's confident, and he has that ability in not looking like he's going to do anything and then looking like he's about to just destroy and score just in a flash, in the blink of an eye. He has. Every time he cuts in, you think if he connects, it's going into the back of the net. I mean, it should have happened a few times against Forest, like you said. He's top tier, it's that thing with football. Like, why did it not work out for him at Juventus? I mean, I'm glad it didn't, but it kind of shows you that sometimes heroes are birthed without you really knowing or predicting that it's going to happen. It kind of happened with Gareth Bale, arguably. And with Kulusevski, we have fallen on our feet in the match. I mean, Daniel Levy must be absolutely loving this because he's almost got a type of replacement for Son and Kane, right? Not really, because obviously different types of players, but they're all playing.
I know what you mean, though. Yeah.
They can all play in the front three. But we've already found one. So all this talk about what we're going to do when Son and Kane have to retire or they're too old to do X, Y, and Z, fine. But we've already got one player in place, and he would be the kind of the spearhead of the attacking lineup. I mean, he is explosive. Again, it looks so easy. It just looks so easy for him, and you also start to think about his development and what type of level he could reach. I mean, when you think of what Gareth Bale actually achieved at Spurs, like his evolution, when it was like left back, left wing, through the middle, when you're thinking, why are you playing him in the middle? Play him on the left, and it's like and suddenly he's Ronaldo. He can play anywhere, and he was just on another level to everybody else, and he was winning games on his own. I think Kulusevski has I know level. I've probably used this word about a dozen times on this pod, but he's another player that kind of has an extra level to get to, and again, it looks like he just looks like a player that will reach it without a problem. I don't doubt him at all. I'm as relaxed as he is about it, because I know that I'm watching something great beginning. I just hope that Spurs can kind of do something with the players that we have at the moment to consolidate and validate all the work, and also make them believe that it's worth staying on and not maybe start flirting with one or two other teams. But Kulusevski could be that type of player where we don't have a control over that. Not because Spurs might not be successful, but because a lot of footballers are career-minded, and they have kind of like, I want to be here at this stage of my career, and then I want to be here. And it's very, very, very easy. If you're top tier, which I think he will be, it's very easy to get your move to Real Madrid or Barcelona. Do you know what I mean?
See, the funny
it's
thing
not
is,
a difficult thing to do.
Is this... I'm just wondering now, is this kind of where we need to sort of change our perspective slightly? Because it does seem to be in, you've used Real Madrid or Barcelona, and it's often my reference point. And I do think, although they're not kind of, I mean, it sounds ridiculous to say over Real Madrid, it just won the Champions League last year. They're perhaps like their aura has waned. I mean, in Barcelona's case, it definitely has. But they're, with this kind of new generation of moneyed elites, with PSG, with Manchester City, the kind of the aura of Barcelona, Real Madrid has waned, but it's still there, right? There's still something, I think, for young players. I think especially like South American players and stuff are playing for one of those two big teams.
It's a massive brand as well.
But do you think to a young generation of players, now that have grown up watching the likes of Son, likes of Harry Kane, players like Dele Alli and stuff like that, who sort of did help Spurs to break through? I know this all sounds a bit kind of like, hey kids, come and join the cool club kind of thing. Yeah. But Spurs, like, we obviously have kind of positioned ourselves as a young, exciting football club, right? A lot of our it's what riles a lot of our older fans now. The fact that a lot of our branding, a lot of our stuff is all very kind of like geared towards kind of Gen Z now, right? A lot of it is geared towards bringing in a new generation, a younger tier of fans, whether it's...
Are we the baddies?
I think we do it in quite a good way still. I think, I think I don't... Honestly, if I had to be completely cards on the table about it, I don't think Spurs actually really get enough credit from us as fans for the kind of line that they tread. I think they create a lot of content that caters to a pretty kind of broad spectrum of I agree, of fans, and I think they have worked really hard and done really well to not only kind of bring in... I think
they know that.
Yeah, I mean, they've worked hard on the American audience, right? They've worked hard on kind of... on bringing in this younger fan base. So I guess my point was, do you think somebody like Kulusevski actually is just thinking, I've arrived, I am at a really good team? Or do you think until we start winning those big things, we're not quite there yet? I just want to hope, I do hope that somebody like Kulusevski has had that experience at Juventus and is now thinking, who I use Juventus because they are classically a bigger team than Spurs, right? I mean, there'll be some interesting discussion now as to, and this all constitutes that whole what is a big club type thing. You know, what Nottingham Forest have won 2 European Cups. They've won the league more recently than Tottenham have. Yet, are we a bigger club than them? Why are we a bigger club than them, if so? You know, that type of thing. It was all that conversation around the time of the Super League when that came out, and you had the Gary Nevilles being like, "Oh, why are Tottenham involved in this?" Well, you know why we are, mate. You know, and it's
I mean, it's hilarious when people like that say that, considering they're fronting the Premier League brand, which is just about money. I mean, that's what the Super League was about, mate. And it was him worried that he'll end up losing his job because they'd lose the coverage. But Tottenham's stature has grown, and we are a big club. We're a big club.
Please believe us.
We're a big club, but what we need, and I don't know if this is a good thing, but to kind of generate this kind of new breed of Tottenham supporters around the world, and kind of really sort of validate that is by winning something. If Tottenham were to win the Premier League, and Harry Kane won the World Cup, I know this is like a fantasy scenario here, but and we won the World Cup as well with Kane lifting it. It's the absolute explosion of a new breed of Spurs fan around the world would just be like impossibly annoying for other supporters in about 3 or 4 years' time, because it's much like you get so many supporters around the world supporting clubs that were previously successful. You do get a new breed of fan that is a glory hunter. Spurs have always had that attraction, I think, because we've always managed to have world-class players, flair players, and play great football. You know, we've always had the Luka Modric's, the Berbatovs, just through. You know, every team has had like a worldie, like Gareth Bale, and then you've got people like Kane and Son. It's just unbelievable levels of talent. We need that cherry on top of the cake, and then when that happens, I think everything falls into place, and the likes of Kulusevski will then look at the fact that, well, okay, we've won the league. Now I'm going to stay here and help Spurs win the Champions League. And that's that. It's just momentum, isn't it, in the moment? And I kind of now that I'm a bit older, a bit more philosophical, I understand why players look to move to win things, because they can easily choose a club to go to and win something immediately, right? Loads of them have done it. Kyle Walker done it. Like Harry Kane could have done it and probably wanted to do it. And you understand that, because it's like, well, I'm elite. What I want to experience what it feels like to be part of an elite team and lift an elite trophy. It doesn't always play out like that. And Spurs, I guess, it's the longest edging that's ever been recorded, probably, and it's gonna be an absolute the money shot to end all money shots when it does happen, because in that moment it'll probably feel better than any other win that anyone else has claimed ever, simply because of the narrative that's followed Tottenham. Spurs never quite get over the line. So yeah, it's the whole stature and brand building. I mean, I don't get caught up in the whole big club thing, because I think Forest are a big club in terms of history, but obviously they're not a big club in terms of relevance right now. And there are differences. You can respect them. I kind of smiled when they were singing about their European Cups on Sunday, and good on them for doing that. No one's going to look at them and say, well, that happened years ago, mate, because they're perceived as a small club now. Do you get what I'm saying? Whereas if Spurs start talking about the 60s, oh, you won it in black and white, did you? And it's like, we know not to go there, simply because we just can't be asked for all the kind of spud tweets. And
it does still wind me up when people say we got 0 trophies. Like, it shouldn't but do, but it does wind me up.
It's ridiculous, but it's also you've got to remember, Jack, the people telling you this were not born when Arsenal were invincible. Do you get what I'm saying? They weren't born when Arsenal last won the league. A lot of these supporters
I'm pretty sure
are literally kids.
All right, if we're doing this though, right? So Arsenal, we won the League Cup more recently than Arsenal have won the Premier League, right?
Yeah, but they're going to throw FA Cups in your face.
Well, that's fine, but 0 Premier Leagues for Arsenal then. If our trophies don't count, 0 Premier Leagues for Arsenal. They've not won it.
You need to tweet that actually later. That's the tweet. You got to do that.
Mate, fuck, I don't know. We gotta hope that Spurs get there, because I don't care. I think there'll be a level of, we know this, when we've won one Premier League. Well, you've only won one. Took you long enough. They're always going to try and take it away from us, but.
I wouldn't care at that point.
I wouldn't give a shit. It's pipe and slippers territory after that. You know what I mean? Like it really is. I wanted to talk about sort of, I guess I said at length, but we're getting on a bit now with the podcast. But still, I did want to mention Richarlison because, again, another, a sublime performance when he came on. Really, I mean, that assist, mate. That assist was just something
delicious.
Special. And we're starting to see now people that. All those kind of, why did we spend 60 million on this lad narratives? I mean, all it will take is him having a few bad games and they'll fire up again. We know this. We know how this cycle works. But still, for the time being, I think people are starting to appreciate, well, we did spend money on having an option like him to bring on and affect games, because it's something that he's done again. He does seem like, I mean, I was buzzing all along from signing him. I think it was a really, really good bit of business for Spurs. Are you happy with it, mate? Are you?
Oh, mate, so
on board
happy
with him?
Before when he was playing for, I mean, even as recently as when Romero nearly killed him. He's the player. It's that cliche, and it's the player that you hate when he's playing against you. But when you've got him on your team, you absolutely love him. And it is like having an Eric Lamela, but far more refined and polished and more specialised in what he's meant to be doing, whereas Lamela was meant to be like a Gareth Bale type of player and ended up being like a Norman Hunter. So with Richarlison, it's his energy. I mentioned it earlier. It's that self-belief. He just feels like he's the best. He believes in himself, and he can still back it up. And he's had opportunities to maybe score, and he's not quite connected. I think that will come, and I think you'll see another level to his game as well, just in terms of confidence. Still need to see, like I said, how does he influence the game from the beginning? Is he the type of player we need in the first half of a home game? If you're looking to be on the front foot, but at the same time, how is he going to adjust? It's a lot easier to come on and influence the game in the latter stages. Like, how is he going to adjust to what Conte's going to ask him to do on the pitch? Is he going to be able to defend, much like Sonny's struggling to do so? Or is he going to just fit in comfortably and his energy is just going to be the reason why he's going to be buzzing around the pitch? But he's exactly what we needed. He's not just a run-of-the-mill kind of Danny Ings type of signing, who's a player a lot of people wanted and fancied to come off the bench and do something. He adds an extra dimension. And there might be a few dark arts in there, but that's fine. I thought his showboating was fucking hilarious. When he got caught in the bollocks as well, when he kind of had that delayed reaction. I'm not super comfortable with play acting, but I'm kind of going to allow it a little bit because I get it. I buy into the fact that it's the type of play that your team needs, and it's no different in some ways to when we had the kind of spiteful Dele Alli. When we've had players that have just been able to kind of just give that extra something to antagonise or to disrupt, to add a bit of controlled chaos to proceedings, and he brings that. And I'm all for it, man. It's box office, and like I said, when he starts scoring as well, I think that the people that are on the fence at the minute, I think will just follow us to where we're sat.
I think one of the things I really took for granted with Richarlison as well, like when he wasn't playing for us, and I guess it's now I would say you're seeing him up close, if you like, is that he's a presence, isn't he? Physically, he's he's a bit of a unit, man, and he's fast and he's really fucking agile. You know, he's he has got something that I don't think. It's almost like in a kind of way, it's almost like he's a bit like a hybrid of Son and Kane. That's kind of the way I sort of look at him, and he's kind of got his own thing going on there. But there is just, I think that's what I find so exciting about this kind of this sort of front unit that we have. Is that, all right, one might sort of say that there's no like for like replacements, and that's a bad thing. But I don't think it is. I think there's such a variety of kind of players there and different styles that it's always going to keep the opposition guessing. You know, it's. Yeah, I don't know. It's just exciting. I'm so glad we've got him on the team. I did want to ask you as well, like, what do you make of all the kind of what I've called the establishment sort of journalism? Steve Cooper moaning about the keepy uppies after the game. You've had Sky Sports kind of put out I would say a pretty wildly kind of Yadar type tweet about his showboating. You've got TalkSport this morning apparently talking about should he have received a yellow card for showboating. Like, what the fuck is all this, man? Like, is this
content, man? It's just
do you think this is, or do you think if we are going to deep this, mate? Do you think this is playing into like a bit more the kind of the psyche of the times at the moment? The fact that things are, especially in this country, taking a bit more of a right-wing conservative kind of tone on things. It seems insane to me that it has boiled this much piss. Like, Arsenal have a literal, we probably have to say alleged rapist playing for them right now, and I appreciate that the media and such can't talk about these things from a legal perspective, but it hasn't stopped them from waxing lyrical about Partey. Like, if you can't talk about him in a negative light, maybe just don't fucking talk about him. Like, but we still had Sky Sports at the end of their match the other day showing him and Arteta having this moment on the touchline, kind of hugging, and we get to shine a light on this. But when we have a player like Richarlison doing a few keepy uppies, you had Martin Tyler literally saying like, maybe he deserves to get fucking injured or something like that.
Yeah,
like,
the commentary was
fucking hell, man. Seriously?
The commentary was ridiculous. But Tyler's always been a bit or not a bit. He's anti-Tottenham.
Is he a gooner? Somebody was saying that to me yesterday.
I think he is, but I'm not certain. But he's always had a displeasure. The famous commentary when we beat West Ham 4-3.
Was that Tyler?
He was like completely gutted. And it is a bit boring now, as funny as it can be. There is a narrative at play, and it's difficult to know whether it's a Tottenham narrative, whether there's something more deeper into it. I think Jamie Redknapp might have actually said that if that was Gascoigne, would be applauding him, and so there might be this kind of. There might be something more to it, just in terms of who is doing what at that particular moment in time. I mean, look, Kane got yellow carded for over celebrating the second goal. We had a red card.
Kane did.
Yeah, apparently that's how I've reported it. I'm pretty sure he got a yellow card for his celebration because it obviously caused a pitch invasion, and I think the referee
I'd be very interested to know how they tallied that, honestly, because. That's bizarre to me.
Because James at Chelsea celebrated in with the crowd, I think, didn't he? And he never got a second yellow. Could be making that up, but there's been loads of those incidences where referees let it go, and then other incidents where obviously if you're pulling your shirt off, you're not going to get away with it. But anyway, my point being is there are other talking matters. There was a penalty and a red card that wasn't given. Looked pretty odds on that Kane would have got his head to it as well. To say that Kane would not have got his head to it because the ball was too high. Yeah, there's this thing called gravity, and the ball was coming down. I mean, he would have got his head to it. The point is, these are the things, VAR, these are the things that we need to be discussing, the inconsistency with the way that technology works and everything else. But no, they want to fixate on something that 2-0 up. It wasn't like. It wasn't completely. I mean, it was taking the piss, but it wasn't. It's not a crime. Nobody fucking died on the pitch. I shouldn't say that anymore, should I? You know,
I know what
it
you mean,
wasn't.
though. It's
It wasn't something worthy of all this. But the thing is, they know that in terms of content, that when you're going to write something or talk about something like this, especially with it being connected to Tottenham, you're going to get loads of people that are going to hate on it because they're not Spurs fans, and they're gonna hate on Richarlison rather, and they're gonna love the fact that there's coverage. And you've seen the tweets. Spurs haven't got one likable player, and this is coming from an Arsenal supporter playing, that certain player that you mentioned earlier with the alleged. It's not even alleged, is it? It's a technicality that's kept him out of prison. So it's this type of thing. We're in this world now where you don't need to say something that's constructed and intelligent. You can just make something up. You can decide this is the mood of what I hope the country will believe to be the mood that they need to feel in this moment. They should find it disgraceful that Richarlison, and he should have had his ankles broken. It's ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. I mean, how Forest should have really had a couple of second yellow cards here and there in that game yesterday. I mean, I'm not that bitter about it at all, to be fair, because it wasn't that kind of game, but there was a lot of clumsy tackles and one or two things that happened where the referee seemed to be a bit lenient on the way he was dishing out the yellows. But I love it. I love that it's boiling piss. I love that he's got that in him, because in a London derby, do that in a London derby, mate. Can you imagine? Like, he'll have 2 or 3 Arsenal players diving into him. It'd be like red cards galore, as long as he doesn't get his legs broken. But you kind of do want that. It is a bit of that Lamella thing, and the thing about Lamella is that he was better known for that than he was for his actual consistency in his football. And I think Richarlison does have that to back him up, and he can get away with keeping up because he does have that extra bit of quality about him.
The thing is, though, mate, the thing about this is it does wind me up on that level that I think so much of this is tied up in, if we are going to go all like, whatever, snowflakey about this, there's such a level of like toxicity tied up in all of this kind of rhetoric about like, well, does he deserve it? That's not what we do over here. Like, I was quite surprised by Steve Cooper because, you'd always heard that, I guess, just because somebody's football's progressive, it doesn't mean that they are as a person, and whatever, it's not the be all and end all. He doesn't have to be a progressive person. He doesn't have to espouse progressive values. Just don't be a complete fucking Luddite out the other end, kind of doing noise. We wouldn't stand for this at Nottingham Forest. We wouldn't stand for that type of stuff. Lads, you just signed fucking Jesse Lingard this summer. Like, what are you on about? We don't stand for us. You've signed somebody like Jesse Lingard and you've geared your whole fucking promo drive around him doing his kind of wacky celebrations and his dances and all this type of shit. Like, don't fucking come at like these kind of situations with these kind of, binary kind of sensibilities to this stuff, this strange kind of moral gatekeeping that they have here, because it to me it is just this really kind of strange Little Englander type mentality that they have. You can't get away with this type of stuff here. You can't.
Jeremy Carragher's lost his absolute shit over this, and
it's bizarre though, mate. Like, you can't do that, and he deserves a rough tackle. These are the same lot, mate. They're the same lot that are twitching their curtains and calling the local pastor to have a chat with him. Such are they so offended by Christian Romero's rough tackling, his shithousing when he comes out. They just cannot make their fucking minds up, right? When either foreigners are these fancy Dan kind of Carlos Kickerball types, or they're the archetypal dirty RG that doesn't want to play the beautiful game type thing. They just cannot make their fucking minds up, and it's so fucking boring. But again, it's so funny that it's Tottenham Hotspur who are at the very kind of centre of this piss boiling, right? And so for any of this kind of we're the media darling stuff, I just point to situations like this and I say, fuck, are we? Like, absolutely not.
The thing is, as well, Jack, when you actually think about the amount of no-look passes, the what's his name at Man United, who or was he at Everton at the time, where he stood on the ball and like put his hand on his forehead as if he was looking to see where he's going to cross the ball. Who the fuck was that? Someone. I can't even pronounce his name. The winger at Man United.
Kulusevski.
That's showboating, right? I mean, there's elements.
Why isn't football allowed to be
nutmegging?
fun?
Nutmegging is showboating technically. Like it's completely unnecessary.
Why isn't football allowed to be fun? Why aren't you allowed to have this flair in it? I don't understand. Like the Premier League, Sky Sports, all this ad campaign they've had this whole summer. You only get to see these moments once. This is a fucking great moment. Why is it this cardinal sin? It's bizarre. It's fucking bizarre.
Agree,
it's fucking bizarre. It's like, I know I'm getting all wound up about this. I find it, and I don't even feel it just because it's a Spurs thing that it's happening to. I do find it's just something bizarre in the psyche with a lot of this stuff. And I do think it is just Little Englanding. Like, I really do. I just think it's this strange kind of, we want to be the hardest, but we also want to say we've got the most fun, most exciting league. Then fucking choose, lads. Like, fucking choose, you know?
Luis Diaz has been doing a bit of juggling as well.
Oh, has he?
So, like, yeah. So the thing is, you're right. There's a weird agenda. I mean, obviously, maybe because he's at Liverpool, like he gets a complete free pass. So yeah, it's this is what I mean. There's not even any logic to the selectiveness of it. You know, like some foreign players are allowed to get away with it. It would appear, but not if they play for Tottenham, which is probably standard kind of media responses to anything Spurs do. Because how dare Tottenham have a player that does that in a football match? Yeah, it's just bullshit. It really is. And we're just not going to get away from that. I think it's just they're fixated on this stuff, and like I said, so much of it is just cartoon exaggeration as well, because they know people are going to call in and go, "Oh, that never happened back in my day when you had proper players, proper white players." Tackling white players, and do you know what I mean? Like, you're going to get that. I don't know why I just attacked a certain type of person there, but there are these weird little narratives. It's not totally about racism and totally about hating foreigners, but there is an element to that, and there's also an element of Tottenham being involved in it. And if that was Lingard doing keepy uppies, oh cheeky lad, what's he doing there? That was, and you can see that playing out. You can see that happening, and I think that's probably why you're getting annoyed, because there is hypocrisy just in plain sight with so much of what happens in football. But again, you know, you want to look at Arsenal playing that player and persisting with that player, and no one really talking about that. Again, it kind of shows you that we're the ones that can talk freely. They're the ones that have to follow a script, and they kind of rewrite that script as often as they wish to, and that tends to be football coverage for the most part. Not all football coverage, but especially that kind of Talk Sports, Sky Sports kind of clickbait type of coverage.
I think that's a nice place to leave it there, mate. I've got myself all a bit aerated there, and I've probably been bashing people's ears off for long enough for this week so far. Anyway, we didn't even get round to talking about West Ham, but fuck them, we're going to beat them. Yeah, go quick prediction for West Ham, mate. I'm saying 2-0 Spurs.
I reckon 2-1 Tottenham.
2-1, they're not scoring against us, mate. But thank you very much, Spooky, for coming on. At Spooky23 on Twitter. If you do, I don't need to tell you to listen to Spooky stuff, but if you do want to hear more from Spooky, he does have a Patreon going on at the moment you can sign into. What else can people find on your Patreon, mate?
Loads of blogs, 4 different podcasts, and some video content as well. It's just Dear Mr. Levy behind a paywall. But appreciate the support for people that have signed up to it. And if you haven't, fucking do it, mate.
Fucking do it. Ditch all the other... No, I'm not going to do it. Just, sign up for Spooky's Patreon. It's good. He's a good bloke. He's a good lad. You are, Spooky. Me patting you on the head a bit there at the end.
Blushing.
I know. But never cheers.